How you doing, YouTube family? Today is Thursday, August the 21st, 2025. Is your man Big D, and I'm back with another one. Want to thank all you good folk out there in YouTube land for continuing to show support to my son and I. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you. I'm back with another video, family. And in this video, I want you to ask yourself this. Have you ever questioned everything that you've been taught about religion? For those of us that was raised in some type of structured religious family, you either came up as a Baptist, you came up as a Christian, you came up as a perhaps a Jehovah's Witness, maybe you was a Catholic, maybe even a Muslim, but those were your family's beliefs. And after a while, when you were growing up and you became an adult, you started questioning some of the things that you had been taught as far as religion, creation, a creator, and the afterlife. So I have always been the type of person that has been ever so inquisitive because I want to know the why. See, if somebody tells me, well, you can't always it's you're not gonna always be able to physically touch something or see something to know that it's real. Case in point, air. Can't see it. You can't see oxygen. You can't see air. But the mere fact that you are still here and you are a creature that needs oxygen to breathe and you are still alive every day, that tells you that that air is real, although you cannot see it. So that is the way that Christians will spin God, the creator, Jesus, angels, Satan, and all the things and all the intangibles that go along with those things that I just said. So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself this. Some things just don't make sense. And if something don't make sense, you have to start questioning it. And not to say that there's not a creator, because I wholeheartedly know that there is, but to say that everything that religion says is the way things are supposed to be, well, I've always questioned that. And having traveled the world, I've seen a multitude of things that will make you question this thing we call existence. It will make you question those things that you were taught growing up as far as religion is concerned. So, family, I found a very interesting video. And those of you that are not familiar, everybody know who Joe Rogan is, and I know everybody know who Billy Carson is. And they had an interesting conversation, and I just wanted to share it. Get it?
Look, we have 46 chromosomes, right?
Right.
What
Chimpanzees
happened?
have 48.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They discovered that chromosome number 2 was taken out. They call it an artificial mutation. They mean geneticists. Fused together and 2 telomere caps put on, 1 telomere cap on each side. Who in the world took chromosome number 2 out, fused it together, and put telomere caps on it? And they say that it happened as an estimated 200,000 years ago, right at the time that the Sumerian tablets say they decided to make mankind to do the labor. There's no coincidence that the tablets are aligning with modern science. And this means that a couple things. The first thing, it means that we were genetically modified. The second thing that it means is the telomere caps limit our lifespan to about 120 years max, according to Harvard scientists. Now, in the Bible, what does it say? It says that my seed shall not abide in man forever. His years shall be 120. That was taken from the Sumerian tablets, even further back than that, thousands of years before the Bible was written, when Yahweh, a.k.a. Enlil, shows back up, sees the human beings building a tower into the heavens, copying a tower that they themselves had built. It pissed him off, and he said, whatever their hearts decide to do, they shall achieve it. My seed shall not abide in man. His years will be 120. And then he did a genetic modification at that point, I believe, with the telomeres, and he spread mankind out around the planet, and he confused their languages. He had us speaking different languages, so we couldn't collaborate. Now we're in competition, no collaboration, divide and conquer.
And this is the Tower of
there-
Babel.
That's it. That's it, man.
So it was all done just to keep us from rising.
Yes. We were advancing too fast, and he had to slow us down. If we shorten their lifespan, then they won't have enough time. By the time they realize who they are and what power they have, they'll be dead. And see, that's what's happened to us.
So the craziest version of this story is that they genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
Right.
And then established different types of civilizations and taught us how to build things, taught us all these different things. And enough time has passed that we've kind of forgotten. Enough time has passed. That's the wackiest version of it, right?
Right. That's the bare bones minimum.
Yeah, the wackiest version is that they made us, which is we've talked about this a couple of times, but how bizarre it is that human beings have this incredible fascination for gold. We're fascinated with gold.
Yeah.
This fascination with gold is really weird. Like, why back when it was basically useless? You couldn't make a knife out of it. You
Right.
couldn't, like it didn't make sense that this would be so valuable. Just because it's rare, you're barely alive.
Right.
We're going, right? We're going back to full-on hunter and
Yeah.
gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges, and it stays.
Yeah.
It stays forever. Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
But family, real quick, why is that? Why is it that no matter who you are, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, other, there is this huge fascination with gold. It has always been that way. And oddly enough, animals have a huge fascination with gold. I don't know why that is. I know back in the days of Egypt, they used to adorn their cats with gold. They would have the cats be walking around all blinged out and whatnot. So it has always been an uncanny fascination with, as Joe Rogan said, man, gold. What I mean, it's soft. You can't form it into a weapon necessarily, but gold is used in a multitude of things like computer super chips. Gold is used in those and semiconductors. So it has uses, but there has always been this just crazy thing about gold. Weird.
Right.
Then you move to like somewhere around the 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of suspending reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can coat things. The reason why things are like coated in gold, silver plated, or gold plated rather, you can take a tiny piece of gold and cover an enormous area with it. It's
Yeah.
a strange metal.
Yeah.
Like really weird. And what, the supposed story is, it's very common on Earth, very rare on Nibiru.
Right. Yeah, that's the story. Now, when I started looking into this gold thing myself, and here's what I came up with. So when you start analyzing the text, you discover that there was an encampment in a place called South Africa at Adams Calendar. Okay. Now, at Adams Calendar, there's actually the very first gold mines discovered. They're dating them back to about 200,000 years ago. And that's incredible because there's a building there that looks like a worn down structure. Now, in the tablets, it talks about the fact that the Ijiji, who were the working class Anunnaki beings who were cleaning out the Euphrates and Tigris River so they can create irrigation and create a bustling civilization. Also, they were doing the actual construction themselves. No people needed, just them working. They were like the construction workers, and Anu and Enki and Enlil, these leader gods, were like the foremen, the master architects and so forth, right? The boss. So these people were working, but they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were volunteers. They got tired of doing the work, according to them, for about 250,000 years of labor on Earth, and also, according to them, on Mars. This is in the text. They call it Lamu. And so they decided to go to war against Enki and Enlil and Anu because their demands had not been met. So they went to meet them in the Epic of Atrahasis. They go to Adam's calendar, they go to that same structure that was discovered where that gold mine is located. I was like, holy crap, there is some link here to gold. Specifically, exactly, I don't know, but I know if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. And the people that you have working it for you probably think, it's to adorn or to adorn yourself or in recognition of the gods. So they'll wear it and they'll utilize it, but not for technology. But what's crazy is they go to war, they get ready to go to battle, and then Enki says, I have an idea that will stop this war. There's an existing being on this planet. Existing, not something that doesn't exist, existing. We can add our essence to it with a slain god. So they're talking about taking the DNA or genetics from one of themselves and mixing it with the DNA of the hominid that was here. It's not specified whether it was, an ape man or anything, but they don't specify in the tablets. But to create a worker being. And they began to do this genetic modification, probably disconnecting some of our DNA, making genetic modifications to us to get us to take orders from them. They inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside. And when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible. And so they made us worship people.
Gene
yes.
inside of us to make us worship them. Wow, how genius.
It's incredible because then you're not a slave anymore. You're doing this for the honor of the gods.
And for people who think all this talk is really crazy, I want to put into perspective that we talked about this the other day, that during which war was it where the Soviet Union was experimenting? It was scientists in the Soviet Union, correct? They're experimenting with creating a chimpanzee human being hybrid that they would probably send to war.
Yeah.
So instead of having regular people, we would make this monster, this freak, ape man, and send him to war and have him crush the enemies.
Yeah.
It's like how crazy is that? They knew how strong chimps are. I got an idea. Let's turn a chimp human, and that way, if he dies, who gives a fuck?
Right.
We made him. Get him to go to work for us.
Yeah.
And now if you're a supremely enlightened being, wouldn't you think of human beings with all of our folly and all of our chaos and all of our war and bullshit and the internet and disinformation and misinformation? Wouldn't you think of us kind of the same way we would think about that chimp hybrid thing?
Yeah.
If I was I was the president of Russia, I want my cousins to go to war?
No.
Or I want to send this freak that I made in a lab?
Yeah, and what's interesting, I'm glad you said made in a lab. They had talked briefly in that text about fashioning people. In other words, almost
How did
like...
they say it?
They said the word fashioning. Fashioning a being.
What was do you remember the actual quote?
I would have to look it up, the actual quote.
But they describe it as fashion.
Fashioning, because they said even the lamb hadn't been fashioned yet, so they had fashioned lambs. So they fashioned, and it's also in the Epic of Gilgamesh, they fashioned the friend that Gilgamesh went on the journey with. He wasn't born from a woman's womb. They created him. They created him an artificial being to go on this journey in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So they used that phrase several times in the tablets. But they said, no, wait. It was almost like that's not a good idea because in some ways it seems as if they had known that the idea of making these too many artificially created people wouldn't be a good idea. Now, they didn't go deeper than that, but you can see where we are today with AI and everything else and these robots that are coming. Maybe they knew something about that, but they decided to take a biological being and genetically modify and program that to do the work, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, if they really knew what we would be capable of and that we would be illogical, overpopulation would be a gigantic issue. And in many parts, it's not really that big of an issue here except for in cities, but in many parts of the world, it's the whole country.
Yeah.
The whole country is New York City, which is just fucking bonkers. And you got to wonder, that's actually not true. It's like, it's not.
Man, family, y'all see that overhead shot? Like ants, right? And those are people.
Even that bad, even in China. China has a lot of open space. But when you're in those cities, they are massive and they are filled with people.
Yeah.
And that is probably what you'd imagine a higher being would do if it was like us, like kind of illogical and kind of a little bit reckless and has a little bit too much technology for the average person that didn't develop the technology. But all of a sudden you got some 85 IQ dope who has access to all the things that all these geniuses have created.
Yeah.
You could figure, we talked to Michio Kaku, he built a nuclear reactor in his house when he was a kid.
I heard about that. That was crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
That's so crazy. But there's a lot of different stuff that you can do and have access to technology that is beyond anything you would ever be able to invent with your own mind. But because we share things across the board, you would imagine that if you were an enlightened being from another planet that's a million years more advanced than us, you'd go, I see where this one's going. You know, like you have that cousin who's an alcoholic and then he wins the lottery. Like, oh shit, Derek just won the lottery.
Yeah.
Fuck. This is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
Derek's got $200 million. It's
Right.
gonna be fucking insane.
It's crazy. And they knew they were going outside their own guidelines and their own laws, their parameters, because they made a statement in the text. They said the creator of all is going to punish them, or they would have to answer to the creator of all for what they did here.
So family, even there, these advanced beings, they know that there is a creator that is going to punish them for what they're doing. So, man, that's crazy. So that tells you that there is something higher than even these beings who, according to what Billy Carson is saying, created Homo sapiens sapiens. Created man, basically.
that lets you know they weren't really gods. They knew themselves that they weren't the creator of the universe, but that they masqueraded as gods on this planet.
Just like we did when different versions of human civilization would find primitive tribes, like the cargo tribe,
cults.
the cargo cult that you talked about in your documentary.
Yeah.
That is so fascinating
Yeah.
that during World War II, planes landed on these remote places,
Yeah.
and these people built mock planes to show like what the thing was that
Right.
came to visit them that they thought were like gods.
Wild.
Do you
Yeah.
think that if the Anunnaki are real and if Nibiru really exists and there's another planet with highly intelligent beings that are far more advanced than us, if that's the case, do you think there's more advanced and more advanced and more, just like we are to chimpanzees, they are to us, and then another race is to them, and then it just keeps going on and on forever until you're God?
Absolutely. I believe there's levels to the game, just like there's levels in terms of how we live on this planet.
Yeah.
We have the first world, second world, third world, just here on Earth. Now, magnify that as a fractal, as a universe as a whole. You have civilizations that are 1 million, 2 million, maybe even 1 billion years ahead. And every universe every civilization progressing within the universe at a specific rate. So you can have beings that have already maybe even shed their corporeal bodies and only exist as beings of energetic light. And then you have everything all the way back down towards us.
So
Look, we have.
Man, family, what y'all think about that? That is some deep-ish, and it takes you down the rabbit hole. But I believe what Billy Carson is talking about, I believe a great deal of it. And for those of us who think that we the only ones out here in this great big universe, that there are not potentially other alternate dimensions that exist on different planes, if you really think that we the only thing here, well, I see why some people get so caught up with why women ain't doing this, why men not doing that, what the president's doing. This president was better, this president, Democrat, Republican. Listen, I could see why those low vibrational people that think on that level gonna always be distracted on things that are really not as significant as we may believe them to be. Man, family, there's a whole lot more going on inside this world, outside this world, in this galaxy, in this whole place. It's other things going on, and we get caught up with this whole, we get caught up with the distraction of being a human being, I guess is what the best way to frame it. And we forget about what's real and what's not. And whether this life that we're living is a matrix, whether there's a possibility that we were created by a higher being that really and truly they know that there was something more advanced in them. And like Joe Rogan said, he gave an excellent example. Just think about it. This whole there's this existence, the next existence, how advanced beings could possibly potentially, see beyond space and time. Man, it's wild when you start looking at what could be. But when you stop believing and you think that what we have here, the BS that we put each other through every day, if you think that's all that matters, that's what drives you, you are going to stay on the hamster wheel, chasing your tail on the merry-go-round until you cease to be. Because sooner or later, everybody goes back to that from whence it came, back to the dust, back to the dirt. And depending on what you did while you was here, that's going to determine what happens next once you leave this plane. Well, family, always remember more tomorrow than you were yesterday. Peace.